But to speak on behalf of Oakland and Weird today, we have Chris Treggiari. Chris is co-curator of the current exhibition at Oakland Museum of California called Oakland, I Want You to Know. It's about gentrification in Oakland and the Bay Area. He's exhibited globally from the Venice Biennale, Yerba Center for the Arts, and also the Getty Center. And he's currently a teacher at the California College of the Arts, and he's also an artist in resident over there. So without further ado, I want to welcome up on stage. Please give a big hand to Chris Treggiari.
Hello. Thank you so much for inviting me. This is a wonderful crowd, and it's really exciting. This is my first time being here, so I'm really excited just to meet everybody and talk a bit about my work in the context of weird, which I think is a lot of fun. I think definitely weird applies. They came to me and said, oh, the theme for this is weird, and what would you want to do? And I think that me being an artist in my practice, I often get that question of what do you do, what the hell is it you're making, what is the art, and it's kind of weird. So I think it kind of fits appropriately to what I do. This is a question that I get often. So welcome, where is the art? I always love that question. Everything I do is popped up in the community space. I've been lucky enough to show in some museums and gallery spaces, but a lot of what I do and a lot of the interaction that I want to achieve is in the public sphere. So it's with different communities, it's all over the Bay Area, up and down the West Coast, and it utilizes mobility as a tool to start conversation and to interact with people, basically. Community engagement is a process of public participation and involvement that promotes relationship building through learning, action, and the expression of needs and values. With that said, community engagement is my art, and what it is me popping up in public and starting these interesting conversations, hopefully relevant conversations that can be archived and shared with other people. Archiving is really important. So starting relevant dialogue, conversation in the public, talking about themes that affect us all in our community, right? In Oakland right now, the museum came to me with this idea of kind of doing a project based on the Zeitgeist of Oakland right now. And of course, what we learned from talking with people was gentrification and the changing dynamics in this community was top mind, right? So we wanted to talk about that. It was a relevant dialogue and a relevant conversation right now. Making the passive viewer an active participant, I always want my viewers outside to be making, to be conversing, to be talking, so I want them to be active, and I want them to be active in the art-making process. Just to start off, creating projects that use curiosity to engage the viewer. I love curiosity. I think that's a big word for me, and I think that curiosity can kind of put us out of our, kind of change our perspective in everyday lives. So when I go outside with this funky little van that turns into this crazy little investigative unit, I'm hoping to kind of just shake people up a bit and kind of change their perspective on our normal days, right? And so for me, it's all about shifting perspective and curiosity. I'm a curious person. Utilizing alternative practices to achieve it, you'll see that. And then archives that document the engagements. And that's a big one, okay? So a lot of this is going out and meeting people and talking with people. And then how do we document that experience and how do we turn it into an archive that then can be shared with others? So those are kind of like my striving principles. And I want to show you guys some projects that hopefully can illuminate that and show maybe why it is a little weird. And I mean, I have friends and artists. My parents think what I do is really weird. I mean, that's for damn sure. We had a show at Yerba Center for the Arts, and the curator was like, does anybody want to talk about what he does? And my parents were like, I have no idea what he does. And I was like, thanks for the support. No, but they're great, but it's a little different. So, all right, so let's get started. So I'm going to start with a project that I did down in San Francisco a couple years back with my wife. And what we did was we started noticing that in San Francisco, right around the Mission area, there was a lot of buildings that were kind of cut at really like sharp angles. We started noticing like these little railroad tracks that were kind of hidden underneath the pavement, but you could see them in certain areas. And we were really curious of the history of that area. And come to find out, the Southern Pacific Railway was an old railway that used to run through San Francisco, came up into the Bay, into the Oakland area, and down into Colma, that area down south, right? San Bruno, that area. It was used for transportation, and then it was actually called the dead car back in like the 30s and 40s, because when San Francisco doesn't have any, there's no bodies in San Francisco, dead people. it's all crematoriums, and they shipped all the dead bodies out into Colma area, right? Do people know this history at all? Yeah. So it was called the dead train or the dead car, or something like it was dead something. So what we did was we wanted to bring awareness to kind of some of this history. And what we did was we made these little vinyl placards. So it started at Southern Exposure, and you had 5 different stops. You could follow the vinyl placards, and the vinyl placard, you'd stand there, and it would give you directions to look to your left, look to your right, and you would notice these little outcrops, these little strange buildings, this railroad track that was kind of hidden on the ground and then all of a sudden was there. It wanted to like bring kind of shine light to these hidden histories, right? And so you would follow the track, follow the stops, and you would end up at me sitting in the cute little booth right there. And I would talk more about the history, right? So I would have these little tickets. We would actually punch your ticket. It was like hand-drawn tickets that gave history about the railway and gave history about the location that we were in. And so for us, it was a way to start uncovering some of these histories in our community, right? And starting relevant conversation surrounding that. So over the course of the day, this was just a kind of a one-off project. We ended up seeing about 200-300 people passing through and started a conversation that maybe some people didn't know. So for us, it was an interesting attempt into the, a first attempt into the public realm. So I work on 2 main projects right now. Mobile Arts Platform with Peter Foucault and Warg Astronomy with Justin Hoover. And they're both great artists. And this one right here is a project from Mobile Arts Platform. So as you see, we have a 1976 Vespa, and we have a teardrop trailer that we tow around the Vespa with. It's super dangerous. And we can go about 20 miles per hour with it, but we do make it around. And what it does is it pops up into a mobile silk screening unit. And what we do is we exchange art for ideas, okay? Art for the theme that we're talking about. So we literally go in, of course this is at Yerba Buena right now, so it's not on the public, but it's always usually in the public. We pop up in street corners, we start silk screening, and the screens have to do with relevant themes that we want to talk about within community. And so for that exchange, for your ideas and for your thoughts on on the theme that we're working with, we'll give you a free piece of art. So we're constantly trying to, A, throw people out of their normal lives right on the street corner, and B, start relevant conversation, hopefully, through the art-making process, C, archiving that so we can share with others, okay? This is what we did in Seattle up here. You can see we popped up on the sides of the road. And working with different artists in the area to create the silkscreen images, these were some of their favorite locations in Seattle in their neighborhood, and we started relevant conversation through the silkscreens and the neighborhoods that they were talking about. So that's my partner, Peter, right there, looking very dapper. So these first ones, I just want to give you an overview of what I do with these 2 projects, and then I'll get into a little more detail with some other projects. This is kind of weird, right? I mean, what I do is I pop out and I just start conversation. So I don't know anybody. We just meet people, and we hopefully start some interesting conversation. This is Warg Astronomy. That's Justin on the right-hand side. That's me on the left. We took 2 industrial bicycles and turned them into a mobile cooking unit. So here is where we travel around in our cute little bikes. We wear our little get-ups, and we go out. We try to start relevant conversation based on relocation, right? This idea of like conflict in our lives and how has that helped shape us, and then utilizing food as a metaphor to kind of talk about this conflict or change in our lives, okay? And so what we do is we go out and we cook recipes, and then we invite people to share with the food. We do this completely off the cuff. Nothing is permanent or anything. So we're very mobile. If the police come, we run, basically. But which has happened plenty of times. What we do is we share those recipes. So what we do is we collect these recipes, we collect these stories. We have cookbooks, we have all sorts of ways that we archive it. We allow people to read and share with us in the streets, and then they share their own stories in exchange for food, okay? So we're feeding people, and at the same time, we're collecting more stories and collecting more kind of recipes, based off this idea. So we've been doing this for years. Our collection has grown quite a bit. We have, I don't want to put any weird numbers, but like hundreds of recipes and stories that we've collected all up and down the West Coast. And so it's an ongoing project. And again, it's this idea of free exchange, right? This idea that we can go out and we can communicate with each other, and we can give. We never want to go out there and just take your opinion, take your thoughts. We want to give something as well. So it's all about this idea of exchange, and all this about this idea of hopefully fair exchange, right? And free exchange as well. So, we go out and we do these things, and we talk. We meet people. Some of these interactions, some of these people, the stories they write, they go on for pages and pages. We get some really interesting feedback, and hopefully we get to learn about each other, which is the key, right? That was us in front of the Academy of Art in San Francisco, and we got kicked out that day. That's just people, different ways to share with us, okay? Sometimes it's masked in napkins, sometimes it's masked in chopstick holders, but it's these pieces of paper that people can share with us to add to the archive. These last two projects I want to show you are definitely a little weird, I think, but they were working with the Oakland Museum of California. The first one's called Eyes on Oakland. Eyes on Oakland is an ongoing project that I've been working with Mobile Arts Platform, right? So not only do we have the tricked out Vespa with the teardrop trailer on the back, we also have a 1963 Ford Falcon van that got restored. It's that guy right there. And we turned it into a mobile investigative unit, basically, is what we like to call it. It was a strange way to meet people, basically, but that's what we did. So we have a projection unit up top. On the front of the van has a drop-down silk screening area where we actually live silk screen with people and exchange, again, art for their ideas. And on the inside, we had a video area, basically, where we were kind of documenting people's ideas and thoughts on surveillance. So the project was about surveillance, specifically in Oakland, over the past couple of years. You may or may not know there's lots of different ways that we're being surveilled in our lives, from shot spotters to license plate readers to all sorts of things. And you may or may not know that there's a thing called the Domain Awareness Center that's currently up for, I believe is still trying to pass, but what the Domain Awareness Center is a place where all of this information, all of this surveillance, all of this data can come in one place. It all gets put into this one center, right? So we worked with Center for Investigative Reporting. Has anybody heard of CIR before? Nice, that's awesome. They're doing amazing work. And so we partnered with CIR to go out and start this conversation about surveillance. And CIR joined us on these engagements, and they wrote articles about what we were finding. So we presented what we found, the research we did, what's happening in Oakland, some of the proposals that are up for passing in the city hall. We wanted to bring awareness, basically, and start that conversation about how do you feel about this. And then CIR would work with us to write articles about what we found and share the information. So again, going out, engaging, working with people to talk about surveillance in Oakland, and then archiving through articles written, through the ephemera that we collected. Those were the silk screens that we made. So they're about this big, right? And we would silk screen those on the front of the van, and we would ask people to, what is surveillance to you? After we started the conversation about what the hell's happening in Oakland right now. Both of these were in Fruitvale. We went all over Oakland, basically setting up and popping up and just talking with people for hours on end. And then another way to kind of promote this and talk about the archive that we were collecting was we worked with the Great Wall. You guys all know the Great Wall, just right down the street. So all of the kind of responses we got, we turned them into a slideshow, then did a whole night of projections on the Great Wall, kind of showing those responses and feedback that we got from the public. If you guys notice on the top of the van, that pop-up projection unit too, we would drive around and basically show people's responses as well. So it was another way to kind of talk about, bring out the information that we were collecting in the community. So again, it's engaging, and then it's archiving, and it's redistributing back into the public. And then the third way that we could archive this stuff is this was at the museum. I don't know if anybody saw the show, but it was an interesting show, I thought. We kind of create our own little domain awareness center inside of the museum. This was all video taken from inside the van. This was video. You can actually get surveillance video from the city if you ask, and so we actually got some surveillance video that we were showing on a loop from downtown Oakland, right on Broadway. And then people's responses. And then that back wall map was a blown out version, kind of by district of Oakland. And we created another archive inside of the museum, which people responded to surveillances to you, again, that question. And the map over the course of the exhibit got populated with people's responses. So I think over the course of that, we received over 400 responses. Out in the public, we got about 200 different unique responses from people over the course of the project. So sharing and communicating with each other, right, I think is really important. I think for some artists, that could be seen as weird. And to me, I don't think it's weird whatsoever. I mean, that's what I like to do. As you guys probably notice, I love to talk, and I'm a talker, and my mom is a talker, oh my God. So she's an amazing person, but we're talkers. I think that's a big part of my practice. And, I do mention talking quite a bit, but what I tell my students too, and all the people I work with, is listening. I love to listen to people, and I love to hear what people are saying about these topics. So we create these strategies, we create these platforms, and hopefully people will share with us, and we can learn through people and through each other. And that's kind of the goal of some of this work. So people are like, well, what's the art? The art for me is I get to create all these fun things. I get to design bikes that fold together, and I get to design vans that pop up into weird stuff. But really, the art for me is the conversation, the archive that's created through these kind of curiosity objects that we create. So this is Oakland, I Want You to Know. I've been working with Evelyn Arantes, and we worked with over 700 community members to create this show over the past year. In the end, we created this immersive installation that hopefully for people is a place where voices can be heard, where opinions can be heard. It's a place where you can learn about each other. It's a place where we can learn about what's happening in Oakland right now. Very much research-driven, very much community-engaged-driven. And it's dealing with what's happening right now. So the museum came to me saying, okay, I'm interested in your community-engaged practice. What would you do if we gave you this report talking about Oakland and talking about 4 specific areas surrounding the museum: Fruitvale, Chinatown, West Oakland, and I'm blanking on the last one, but it was 4 distinct areas. The report, of course, talks about these types of things: the changing dynamics in these communities, the changing dynamics through gentrification, displacement, ideas like that. So me getting the report said, okay, well, let's dive into this deeper and let's see what people are saying. In the creation of this show, we wanted to create something where I wanted to create a platform, a stage, right, that people could share with me. Not me telling you, okay, this is what I want to tell you. This is what I think is happening in Oakland right now, and I'm going to create this piece. No, what we wanted to do was create a place where people could share, people could talk, people could illuminate what people are saying currently in Oakland, right? What's the zeitgeist of the day right now? We broke it into different sections. The Orbit Room is an old jazz and blues bar that's in West Oakland, and so we kind of recreated these small structures that acted as housing for the conversations that we were having in community. Again, the methods of collection were community-engaged processes out in the public, but it was also videos. We made 3 distinct videos that looked at healthy growth in urban farming in West Oakland right now. We looked at art and culture and the shifting dynamics of that in Oakland. And then the 3rd video was getting to know your neighbor. So we talked to a lot of residents. We talked to a lot of longtime residents. We talked to a lot of new residents. And we started asking questions about the history of the space, the history of Oakland, the history of West Oakland, and what's happening now, and what would the future look like. And we did that for about a year, gathering and talking and putting together, which then manifested into this piece. We worked with 10 to 12 different nonprofits. This is the inside of Victorian. We actually recreate an old-time Victorian house. On the back, you can see all these books right here. We worked with 600 different school students to create these books, asking the students to illustrate what Oakland means to them right now, talk about what Oakland means to them right now, and they create these wonderful little books. So if you go inside the museum, you can see all different age groups. We're talking from little kids to junior high, high school, getting their responses to that question. We definitely dove into a lot of history in there, talking about the ports. We're talking about the music and culture, talking about redlining, talking about gentrification. We also pulled tons of different quotes and turned them into pieces. So as you can see, those cross-stitch pieces in the back, the pillows and the wall pieces, were taken from quotes that we got from people in the community, okay? This was on the outside of the Orbit Room. This was a video done, the idea of urban gardening and urban planning and things like that. We worked with City Slickers Farms for this one, so this was actually shot on location at City Slickers Farms. And we also did interactives with Angie Wilson, who is a great artist. Angie Wilson did these really wonderful planter beds right here, felt vegetables, and we did an interactive at City Slickers asking people to think about what constitutes a healthy community and what's healthy growth in a community. And so that was all embedded into the show. This was done with Youth Radio. So does everybody knows Youth Radio, right? All right, cool. Youth Radio is doing amazing stuff. They did this really awesome project called West Side Stories, basically, which was where the youth went out and started conversation with residents in West Oakland, charting stories and recording those stories. So they had an online version. Please check it out. It's really amazing. And we wanted to make a digital version of of the piece. And so I worked with three to four different youth from youth radio to decide how we would manifest that into an analog piece, right? So we talked about the BART and the symbology is what I was about to say. The symbolism of the BART and why that was important for them. And so we did a small recreation of the BART, and the map actually coincides with audio pieces that drop down that has the stories that they collected out in the public. So again, another way to share these types of stories, right? And then lastly, the middle part, which was activating, being active, being an active citizen, and how can we go out and how can we share our voice and what we're thinking. And so in the middle, we have all the district members in Oakland, and we're asking people to write a letter to your district person, and then we're sending the letters out. So it's a way to kind of educate, inform, be aware of what each other is saying, and at the same time, sending out a message and maybe being active through our own voices. I enjoyed having, I think the practice is a little different, and, I really appreciate you guys taking the time.